fluency in English is something that millions of learners dream of achieving. I remember when I was a student just like you, full of motivation but also full of fear. I wanted to speak English clearly and confidently, yet I was too shy to try. Every time I opened my mouth, I felt nervous, and I often made mistakes that made me want to stop speaking altogether. Then one day, a teacher looked at me and said something that completely changed my journey. He said, "You can speak English fluently if you practice every single day." It sounded simple, but those words became the seed that grew into my success. From that day on, I understood that fluency isn't something you get overnight, it's something you build, slowly and patiently. Fluency is like planting a tree. You place the seed in the soil, water it daily, and make sure it gets sunlight. At first, you see nothing. But if you keep caring for it, one day it grows tall and strong. The same is true for your English. Each word you practice, each sentence you repeat, and each mistake you learn from, these are like drops of water that help your language grow. I once had a student who came to me looking sad and frustrated. "Teacher," she said, "I want to speak English, but I always forget the words." I smiled and told her, "Don't worry. Fluency isn't about remembering every single word, it's about practicing regularly." She looked at me with hopeful eyes and asked, "But how do I practice?" I explained that practice isn't limited to the classroom. You can practice by talking to your friends, listening to stories, or even singing songs in English. Every small action counts. Practice is not a special event, it's something you can do all day long, in small moments, everywhere. When I was a student myself, I loved listening to stories. Every evening, my teacher would read one to us, and I would repeat after her. In the beginning, I was slow and unsure, but with time my confidence grew. I started understanding more words and using them naturally. That's when I realized that fluency is not about speaking fast, it's about speaking clearly and confidently. There was once a boy in my class who spoke very quickly, but no one could understand him. I told him, "You don't have to rush. Slow down. Speak with meaning. Use simple words." He listened, and within a few weeks, his communication improved greatly. He felt more relaxed, more confident, and people finally understood what he was trying to say. Fluency is a journey, not a race. You take one step at a time and enjoy the process. Each day you move a little closer to your goal, and one day, you'll look back and be amazed at how far you've come. I've seen many students who were once afraid to speak. They made mistakes, they hesitated, but they didn't quit, and that's why they became fluent. Remember, your effort matters more than your speed. So, if you truly want to become fluent in English, begin today. Start with small steps, practice daily, and trust the process. Every word you speak brings you closer to fluency. And before we continue to the next part of this journey, don't forget, if this story inspires you to keep practicing, subscribe to Learn Smarty and like this video. Your support helps us bring more English stories that help you grow stronger every day. When the student heard me say that practice is the key to fluency, she looked a little confused. She asked softly, "But teacher, what if I don't have anyone to practice with?" I smiled and told her something that many students don't realize: practice is everywhere, you just have to see it. You don't need a classroom or a partner to practice English. You can practice while walking, while doing chores, even while thinking. If you're cooking, talk to yourself in English about what you're doing. "I'm cutting vegetables. I'm boiling water. I'm making tea." If you're on your way somewhere, describe what you see. "The weather is sunny. There's a blue car passing by. That man is reading a newspaper." When you describe your world in English, you train your brain to think in English naturally. This is how you build the habit of fluency, not through big lessons once in a while, but through small daily moments that strengthen your connection with the language. I remember when I was in school, I made English a part of my day. I would think in English, write in English, and even dream in English sometimes. At first, it was strange and slow. But as days passed, English became more natural, almost automatic. It stopped feeling like a subject and started feeling like a part of who I was. Another student once came to me and said, "Teacher, I can read and write well, but when I speak, I freeze." I told her, "That's because you're afraid of being wrong." But fluency doesn't come from perfection, it comes from courage. You must give yourself permission to make mistakes, because every mistake you make teaches you something. She asked me, "So what should I do when I make a mistake?" I said, "Smile and keep talking." That's what fluent speakers do. They don't stop when they make mistakes, they continue. Then I shared a secret with her, a simple but powerful truth. The more you listen, the better you speak. Listening trains your brain to understand rhythm, pronunciation, and natural word flow. When you listen to English, stories, songs, or conversations, you absorb patterns without even realizing it. I told her, "Don't just listen, repeat. When you hear a sentence, say it out loud. Let your mouth get used to the movement of English sounds." She started doing it every day, listening to short English podcasts and repeating them word by word. At first, she felt awkward. But within a few weeks, her speech became smoother. Her voice was no longer hesitant, it carried confidence. That's when she learned one of the most important lessons in English learning. Fluency is not about remembering, it's about repeating. The more you repeat, the more comfortable you become. Fluency is built by action, not by waiting. You can't learn swimming by watching someone swim, you must step into the water. The same is true for English. You can't become fluent just by listening, you must use your voice. So, whenever you hear English, in a story, a movie, or a conversation, don't just be a listener. Be a speaker. Repeat what you hear. Shadow the sentences. This habit alone can change the way you speak forever. Fluency begins the moment you stop thinking "I can't" and start saying "I'll try." Every word you speak is one step closer to the fluent, confident speaker you want to become. After a few weeks, that same student returned to me with a smile. "Teacher," she said, "I'm speaking more often now, but I think I still sound strange. Sometimes, people don't understand me." I nodded and asked, "Do you try to speak fast?" She laughed a little and said, "Yes, I want to sound fluent, so I try to talk quickly." I smiled and told her something that surprised her: fluency is not about speed, it's about clarity. There was once a boy in my class who spoke faster than anyone else. His words rushed out like a river, but no one could understand what he was saying. I called him after class and said, "You don't need to prove that you're fluent by speaking fast. Slow down, pronounce your words clearly, and use short, simple sentences." He followed my advice. At first, it felt uncomfortable to him, he thought he was speaking too slowly. But a week later, something changed. People began to understand him. He no longer needed to repeat himself, and his confidence grew. His English didn't just sound fluent, it sounded natural. Fluency is not a race to the end of a sentence. It's a journey that moves at your pace. When you speak too quickly, your brain and mouth lose balance. But when you slow down, your words come out with meaning, and your listener stays connected. I often tell my students, fluency is not just about talking, it's about being understood. If your listener understands you easily, you're already fluent enough. Another student once asked me, "Teacher, if I speak slowly, won't I sound less confident?" I told her, "Not at all. Confidence comes from control. When you control your words, you sound calm, not weak." Fluent speakers aren't the ones who speak the fastest, they're the ones who make you want to listen. When you pause between sentences, your words have power. When you speak with emotion, your message becomes memorable. If you ever feel nervous, take a breath before you speak. Don't rush. Let your voice flow naturally. You don't have to copy anyone's accent or speed. Your voice, your rhythm, and your confidence make your English unique. Fluency is a mix of clarity, confidence, and connection. When you speak clearly, your listener connects to your message. When you speak with confidence, they feel your energy. And when you speak from the heart, your words stay with them long after the conversation ends. I remember once during a class, I asked my students to read a paragraph aloud. One student read it slowly, focusing on pronunciation. Another read it quickly, trying to sound fluent. When I asked the class which one they understood better, almost everyone pointed to the slower reader. That day, they all learned that speed is useless if clarity is missing. Fluency is like music. If the notes are too rushed, the song loses its beauty. But when every note is given time, it becomes a melody that everyone enjoys. So, when you practice your English today, don't worry about how fast you speak. Worry about how clearly you express your ideas. Because true fluency is not about showing off your speed, it's about showing that you can connect, communicate, and be understood with ease. Remember, it's better to speak slowly and be understood than to speak quickly and be forgotten. A few days later, another student approached me after class. She looked nervous but determined. "Teacher," she said, "I listen to English every day, but I still make so many mistakes when I speak. Maybe I'm not good at learning languages." I smiled and told her something I tell all my students. Mistakes are not your weakness, they are your teachers. If you're afraid of making mistakes, you'll never grow. Every time you say something wrong, your brain learns a new way to say it right. That's how real fluency is built, not from perfection, but from progress. I once had a student who was so afraid of being wrong that she stayed silent in every class. She understood everything but never spoke. One day, I said to her, "You'll never learn to swim if you never step into the water." That day, she decided to speak, even if she made mistakes. She stumbled, she paused, she forgot words, but she kept going. By the end of the month, she was speaking more freely than ever before. When I asked her how she felt, she said, "I'm not afraid anymore." That was the moment she became fluent, not perfect, but confident. Fluency is not about never making errors, it's about not letting errors stop you. Even native speakers make mistakes, they just keep talking. The more you practice, the less those mistakes matter, because your brain and mouth start to work together. One of the best ways to learn from your mistakes is to listen carefully, to yourself and to others. Listening trains your ear to recognize natural sounds, rhythm, and pronunciation. When you listen, you notice how native speakers pause, emphasize words, and connect ideas. I once had a student who struggled with pronunciation. She practiced for hours but couldn't get some sounds right. So I told her to try something different, to listen first. For 2 weeks, she listened to short English stories every night before bed. She didn't try to repeat them, she just listened carefully. Then one day, she started repeating the sentences, and suddenly, her pronunciation improved without effort. Listening is a silent teacher. It teaches you patterns, tones, and emotion. When you listen deeply, you begin to feel the language, not just understand it. Repetition is the next key. Whatever you hear and like, repeat it again and again. If you hear a phrase you want to use, say it aloud 10 times until your mouth remembers it. Because that's what fluency really is, your mouth remembering what your brain already knows. I used to do this myself. Whenever I learned a new phrase, I would repeat it while walking, waiting, or traveling. I whispered it under my breath until it felt natural. And soon, those phrases became part of my everyday speech. Many students think fluency comes from learning new things. But the truth is, fluency comes from repeating what you already know until it becomes effortless. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be shy to repeat sentences aloud. And don't rush to learn more before you've mastered what you already know. Listen every day. Repeat what you hear. Speak without fear. That's how you turn learning into fluency, step by step, mistake by mistake, until one day, speaking English feels as natural as breathing. After that class, another student came to me, looking frustrated. He said, "Teacher, I understand English when I read or listen, but when I try to speak, my mind becomes blank." I looked at him and asked, "Do you think in English or in your own language first?" He paused for a moment and said, "I think in my own language, then I translate it into English." I nodded and said, "That's why you feel stuck. You're trying to speak with your mouth while your brain is still translating." Fluency begins when you stop translating and start thinking in English. When your thoughts flow directly in English, your words will follow naturally. This change doesn't happen overnight, but with daily practice, your brain starts to switch languages smoothly. I told him to start small. When you wake up, I said, describe your morning in English. Say to yourself, "I'm getting out of bed. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm making breakfast." When you walk to school or work, look around and describe what you see in English. He started doing this every day. At first, it felt strange and slow. But after a few weeks, he told me, "Teacher, I don't need to translate anymore. The words come on their own." That's when I smiled and said, "Now you're truly becoming fluent." Fluency isn't just about speaking, it's about living in English. The more you surround yourself with the language, the faster your brain adapts to it. Change your phone language to English. Read small signs, menus, and messages in English. Watch short English videos, even if you don't understand every word. Your brain learns through repetition and exposure, not memorization. I had another student who loved to talk. He was confident but had one problem: whenever he spoke English, he would mix in words from his native language. I told him, "That's normal in the beginning. But try to explain everything in English, even when you don't know the exact word." He asked, "But what if I can't remember a word?" I replied, "Then describe it. Use other words to explain what you mean." He practiced this technique, and within a month, he was surprised by how much easier it became to express himself. Even when he didn't know the perfect word, he kept the conversation going. That's the real goal: communication, not perfection. Fluency means being able to express yourself clearly, even when your vocabulary isn't complete. It means not stopping when you forget a word, but continuing with what you already know. When you speak English daily, even to yourself, your brain learns how to find the right words faster. Another simple but powerful method I teach my students is shadowing, repeating what you hear immediately. You can do it with podcasts, YouTube videos, or English shows. Listen to one sentence, pause, and repeat it exactly as you heard it. This helps you train your pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence. I once had a student who practiced shadowing for just 15 minutes a day. At first, she struggled to keep up, but after a month, her speech became faster and smoother. She told me, "Teacher, I don't just hear English anymore, I feel it." That's when I knew she had made a breakthrough. Fluency is like a muscle: the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. When you think in English, speak in English, and live in English, you stop studying the language and start using it naturally. So, if you want to move from learning English to living English, start today. Talk to yourself, describe your surroundings, and let English be a part of your every moment. You'll be amazed how quickly your brain adapts, until one day, you won't even realize you're speaking English anymore. It will simply be your voice. One of the most powerful ways to become fluent in English is by reading. Reading helps you see how sentences are built, how words connect, and how ideas flow. It gives you silent practice that shapes the way you think and speak. I remember one student who came to me with a small book in her hands. She said, "Teacher, I try to read English books, but I don't understand everything. Should I stop?" I smiled and told her, "No, don't stop. Even if you don't understand every word, keep reading. Because with every page, you're improving, even when you don't notice it. At first, she would struggle with almost every sentence. But I told her not to focus on understanding every single word. Instead, I said, try to understand the idea, the meaning, the feeling behind the sentence. She followed this advice and read a few pages every day. After a few months, she returned to me and said, "Now, I understand more than half of what I read." I smiled and said, "That's fluency in progress." Reading every day had slowly trained her brain to recognize patterns, vocabulary, and structure, without memorization. When I was learning English myself, I did the same. I started with simple storybooks meant for children. Every time I came across a new word, I wrote it down. Then I made a simple sentence using that word. The next day, I tried to use it in my speaking practice. That habit changed everything. Fluency doesn't come from knowing thousands of words, it comes from using the ones you already know. So instead of trying to learn too many new words at once, focus on understanding and applying a few every day. If you learn 5 new words, make sure you use all 5 in real sentences. Use them when you talk, when you write, or even when you think. Another student once told me, "Teacher, I read books, but I forget new words quickly." I said, "That's because you only see them, you don't use them." To remember a word, your brain needs to see it, hear it, speak it, and use it. The more ways you interact with it, the stronger it stays in your memory. I also tell my students to read aloud. When you read aloud, you practice pronunciation, tone, and rhythm without fear. You hear your own voice in English, and that builds confidence. One student used to read a short English story every night before sleeping. At first, she felt shy to read aloud, but after a few weeks, she noticed something amazing. Her pronunciation was smoother, her confidence was higher, and she started speaking English more freely during class. Reading had trained both her eyes and her tongue at the same time. Books, articles, and even short stories are silent teachers. They don't correct you directly, but they show you how English feels when it's used naturally. The more you read, the more you understand how ideas are expressed, not just words, but emotions, tone, and meaning. If you don't like reading long novels, start small. Read children's stories, news headlines, or simple blog posts. What matters most is consistency. 10 minutes of reading every day is far better than 2 hours once a month. Reading will not only grow your vocabulary but also improve your speaking and listening skills, because when you read often, you start to think in English automatically. So, make reading a part of your daily routine. Choose something you enjoy, stories, poems, or short lessons like this one. Let the words become your friends. Because the more you read, the more natural English will sound in your mind. Fluency grows in silence before it appears in your speech, and reading is that silent practice that turns thoughts into confidence and confidence into words. There is another powerful way to improve your English that many learners forget: listening to yourself. Sometimes, the best teacher you can have is your own voice. I once had a student who always told me, "Teacher, I don't know what I sound like in English." So, I gave her a simple task: record yourself speaking in English every day. It could be anything: reading a paragraph, describing your day, or telling a short story. Then, listen to the recording and notice how you sound. At first, she was uncomfortable. She told me, "Teacher, my voice sounds strange, and I make too many mistakes." I said, "That's good. Now you can hear what to fix." Every recording is a mirror, it shows you what you're doing well and what needs improvement. She continued this routine for a month. Every day, she recorded for just 5 minutes. And then one day, she walked into class smiling. She said, "Teacher, my pronunciation has improved. I can hear the difference." That's the power of self-practice. Your progress becomes visible when you listen to yourself. When you hear your own voice, you become more aware of your pronunciation, rhythm, and clarity. You start to notice your strong points and your weak points. This awareness helps you correct mistakes naturally, not because someone tells you to, but because you can hear it yourself. Fluency doesn't just come from studying. It comes from hearing yourself improve. When you record your progress, you don't just practice, you build confidence. And confidence is what turns a learner into a speaker. Another great way to grow faster is to practice with a friend. When you learn together, you learn twice as fast. I remember 2 students from one of my classes. They were best friends, but both were shy about speaking English. One day, I challenged them, "From now on, talk to each other only in English." They laughed at first and said, "That's impossible." But they decided to try. Every day, they spoke in English for 10 minutes. They made mistakes, they laughed at themselves, but they never stopped. After a few months, something amazing happened. Both of them became confident and fluent. They didn't even notice how much they had improved until one day, during a class discussion, they spoke freely in front of everyone, without fear. Their classmates were surprised, and I smiled because I knew their secret: daily conversation practice. When you speak with a partner, you learn to listen, respond, and think quickly. You also learn how to express yourself naturally, not just repeat memorized phrases. And when your partner corrects you kindly, you learn without pressure. Fluency grows stronger when you practice with others, not because they're perfect, but because they give you the chance to speak freely. If you can't find a partner nearby, you can still practice online, or even with yourself. You can ask a question and then answer it aloud, like this: "What did I do today?" Then respond, "Today, I went to school. I studied English. I met my friends." This simple exercise trains your brain to think and respond automatically in English. Remember, speaking alone is useful, but speaking with others teaches you to communicate, and that's what real fluency means. It's not just about saying words correctly, it's about connecting with people confidently. So, record yourself often. Listen to your progress. Speak with a partner whenever you can. Because the more you use your voice, the more powerful and fluent it becomes. Every recording, every conversation, every mistake, they are all stepping stones leading you toward the fluent English speaker you're meant to be. Fluency doesn't just live in classrooms, it grows in the real world. You can read hundreds of lessons, memorize grammar rules, and listen to countless podcasts. But until you use English in real situations, it will remain just a lesson, not a skill. I remember a student who worked at a small shop. One day, he came to me and said, "Teacher, I study English every day, but when customers speak to me in English, I freeze." I asked him, "Do you speak English at your shop?" He shook his head and said, "No, I'm afraid they won't understand me." So, I gave him a simple challenge. For 1 week, try to speak English with your customers, even if it's just one sentence. He agreed. At first, it was difficult. He hesitated, made mistakes, and sometimes switched back to his own language. But he didn't stop. When he came back a week later, he looked different, more confident. He said, "Teacher, I did it. At first it was hard, but now I can say simple things easily." He had discovered something powerful: fluency doesn't come from studying, it comes from using. Everyday life is full of opportunities to practice. If you're at the market, ask for prices in English. If you're talking to a friend, try adding English phrases. If you're alone, describe what's happening around you in English. Every small effort adds up. Fluency is not built in one big step, it's built in 1,000 small moments of courage. I once had two students who made a promise to each other. We'll speak only in English during lunch breaks. They started with broken sentences and laughter. But after a few weeks, English became their habit. Soon, they were speaking fluently without even realizing it. The key is to create your own English environment. You don't need to live in an English-speaking country to be fluent. You can make English a part of your daily life right where you are. Change your phone and social media language to English. Write your daily thoughts or to-do list in English. Watch English videos and try to explain them in your own words afterward. Even when you think you're not learning, you are training your mind to live in English. Another important part of using English daily is to stay relaxed while speaking. Many students feel nervous, thinking, "What if I make a mistake?" But when you're relaxed, your mind stays clear and your words come more naturally. I once told a student who always tensed up before speaking, "Take a deep breath." Fluency doesn't live in tension, it lives in calmness. He practiced this, taking one breath before every sentence. And soon, his voice sounded confident and smooth. So, speak freely. Don't wait for perfect moments. Practice English whenever and wherever you can, even if it's just for a minute. If you keep your fear small and your effort big, your fluency will grow faster than you imagine. Remember, fluency doesn't come from grammar books, it comes from real-life practice. The more you use English in your daily routine, the more natural it becomes. Every conversation, every attempt, every word spoken aloud brings you closer to true confidence. So today, take a small step, speak English somewhere outside your comfort zone. You might make mistakes, you might feel nervous, but that's okay. Because courage, not perfection, is the real key to fluency. Fluency in English is not just about practice, it's also about purpose. You need to know why you want to be fluent, because your reason will keep you moving when progress feels slow. I once asked my students, "Why do you want to learn English?" Some said, "For a better job." Others said, "To study abroad." But one student stood out. She said, "I want to learn English so I can talk to people around the world." That simple goal gave her endless motivation. When you have a clear reason, every small effort feels meaningful. Even when learning feels difficult, your purpose reminds you why you started. One of my students wanted to travel to an English-speaking country. She practiced every single day, watching movies, reading books, and speaking aloud to herself. Whenever she felt tired, she looked at a picture of her dream destination and said, "I'm learning English for this." Her focus and dedication paid off. By the time she traveled, she was confident and fluent. Goals are not just about the destination, they are about direction. Without a goal, you walk in circles. But when you know your purpose, every step takes you closer to success. Along with goals, you must keep your curiosity alive. Curiosity is what makes learning exciting. Whenever you hear a new word, don't ignore it, find out what it means. When you read or listen to something interesting, ask yourself, why did they use this word here? That question helps you understand how English really works. I once had a student who was extremely curious. Every time she heard a new phrase, she wrote it down and asked me about it in the next class. Then she would try to use that phrase in her own sentences. Because of her curiosity, her vocabulary grew quickly, and so did her fluency. Curiosity keeps your learning fresh. It turns English from a boring subject into an exciting discovery. And when you enjoy what you're learning, your brain remembers it naturally. Another secret to staying motivated is to celebrate small victories. Fluency is a long journey, and if you only wait for big success, you'll get tired. But if you celebrate small wins, like learning 5 new words, or speaking for 2 minutes without stopping, you'll feel proud and motivated to continue. I once had a student who kept a fluency journal. Every day, she wrote one small thing she achieved, a new word she learned, a sentence she spoke confidently, or a compliment she received from a friend. After a few months, She looked back at her notes and said, "Teacher, I didn't realize how much I've improved." That's the power of recognizing your progress. Sometimes, motivation comes from seeing how far you've already come, not how far you still have to go. And remember this, fluency grows best when you're enjoying the process. If you force yourself to learn, you'll get tired quickly. But if you enjoy the lessons, through stories, songs, or conversations, learning becomes effortless. Fluency is not a burden, it's a journey full of discovery. Be curious, set small goals, and keep moving forward. Even on the days you feel stuck, remember, every word you practice, every sentence you speak, and every mistake you make is proof that you're improving. So keep your goals clear, your curiosity alive, and your attitude positive. Because the more joy you find in learning, the faster fluency will find you. Fluency is not something that happens in a week or even a month, it's a journey that unfolds slowly, beautifully, and with patience. I've taught many students over the years, and the one thing that separates the fluent speakers from the ones who give up is simple: persistence. There was a student I remember very well. He was hardworking but impatient. Every week he would say, "Teacher, I'm not improving fast enough." He practiced daily, yet he felt disappointed when he made mistakes. One day, I told him, fluency is like climbing a mountain. You may not see how far you've come until you look back. A few months later, that same student gave a presentation in English, calmly, confidently, and clearly. When he finished, the entire class clapped. I asked him, "Do you still think you haven't improved?" He laughed and said, "Now I see what you meant, teacher." Patience is one of the greatest tools in language learning. Even when progress feels invisible, it's happening quietly inside you. Every time you listen, read, or speak, your brain builds connections. You might not notice it today, but one day you'll speak, and everything will just flow. Fluency is also about routine. Set aside time each day to practice, even just 15 minutes. I once had a student who practiced every morning before breakfast. He called it his English time. It became a habit, just like brushing his teeth or drinking tea. After a few months, his improvement was amazing. He told me, "Teacher, it's not just my English that changed, I changed. I'm more confident now." Fluency shapes more than your language, it shapes your character. It teaches you discipline, patience, and confidence, qualities that help you in every part of life. Another student once asked, "Teacher, how do I know I'm fluent?" I said, "You'll know you're fluent when you stop counting your mistakes and start enjoying your conversations." Fluency doesn't mean speaking without error. It means speaking without fear. It means sharing your thoughts freely, even if your grammar isn't perfect. Sometimes, you'll forget a word. Sometimes, you'll pause mid-sentence. That's normal. Even native speakers do it. What matters is that you keep going. If you ever feel tired, take a break, not because you failed, but because you deserve to rest. I once had a student who practiced endlessly but became frustrated. I told her, rest is also part of progress. When your mind is calm, your learning becomes faster. She took a short break, returned with fresh energy, and improved more than ever before. Learning English isn't just about grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. It's about connection, with people, with stories, and with yourself. When you learn a new language, you don't just open a book, you open a new world. Sometimes, you'll meet people who inspire you. Sometimes, you'll inspire others without realizing it. Every word you learn, every sentence you speak, becomes part of your story. You may not notice it, but right now, as you practice, you are becoming someone stronger, someone who can express ideas, emotions, and dreams in a new way. And that's what fluency truly means: freedom. Freedom to connect with anyone, anywhere. Freedom to understand and be understood. Freedom to express yourself without fear. So, be patient. Keep practicing. Celebrate every small victory, every sentence spoken, every mistake corrected. Because each step brings you closer to the confident, fluent speaker you want to be. Fluency doesn't belong to the fastest learner. It belongs to the one who never stops trying. So, wherever you are in your journey, keep going. Speak today, listen today, and learn today. Because the future fluent version of you is already growing, word by word, sentence by sentence, day by day. And one day, you'll look back and realize, you didn't just learn English, you discovered a new part of yourself.